Have you ever stopped to question why you label events in your life as good or bad? Have you ever considered that your greatest setbacks might actually be your greatest opportunities? What if everything you experience is neutral until you assign it meaning? Life throws countless situations our way. Some we celebrate, others we dread. But what if I told you that nothing is inherently good or bad? That every event is simply raw material, waiting for you to shape it with your perception? Today, we'll explore powerful Stoic insights that will help you master your mind, see challenges as opportunities, and reclaim control over your life. Before we dive into these transformative Stoic principles, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a shift in perspective, and subscribe for more wisdom to elevate your mindset. Let's begin. 1. Reality is neutral. Your mind creates the meaning. Imagine two people walking down the street when it suddenly starts raining. One groans, pulls their coat tighter, and mutters about how miserable the day has become. The other looks up, smiles, and enjoys the cool droplets on their skin. The rain is the same for both people, but their experiences are entirely different. Why? Because reality itself is neutral. It doesn't have an inherent meaning. The meaning comes from how we interpret it, the power of perception. The Stoics believe that events themselves are neither good nor bad. Instead, it is our judgment that assigns value to them. This idea is captured beautifully in the words of Epictetus. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. Think about the story of two athletes who sustain the same injury. One falls into despair, believing their career is over. The other sees it as an opportunity to rest, recover, and come back stronger. Their physical reality is identical, but their inner realities couldn't be more different. One is trapped in suffering, the other in resilience. The difference? Mindset. Everyday examples of neutrality. Take, for example, a job loss. One person sees it as a catastrophe, believing their future is ruined. They panic, feel worthless, and spiral into negativity. Another person sees the same job loss as a chance for a fresh start, an opportunity to pursue something they truly enjoy. The event is the same, being laid off, but the reaction is entirely different. Consider a breakup. One person feels abandoned and crushed, thinking they'll never find love again. Another person, though heartbroken, sees it as a lesson, an opportunity to grow and find a better match in the future. The breakup itself is neutral. It is how we interpret it that determines whether we suffer or grow. Shifting your perspective. One of the most effective ways to apply the Stoic principle is through reframing. When something seemingly negative happens, ask yourself, is this truly bad, or am I just labeling it that way? Could this be a hidden opportunity? Will this matter a year from now? By questioning your initial reaction, you create space between yourself and your emotions, allowing you to see reality more clearly. The traffic jam test. Imagine two people stuck in traffic. The first person is frustrated, gripping the steering wheel, honking and cursing. They feel like the world is conspiring against them. The second person in the same traffic jam takes a deep breath, puts on a favorite podcast, and enjoys the forced pause in their day. What's the difference? Perspective. The first person suffers because they resist reality. The second person adapts and finds value in the situation. The traffic is neither good nor bad. It simply exists. How we choose to respond determines our experience. Applying this to life. Start observing your own thoughts. When something happens, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, am I seeing this for what it is, or am I layering it with my own judgments? By practicing this, you take control of your mind, freeing yourself from unnecessary suffering. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the master of your own perception. Reality is neutral, and that is the greatest power you have. The choice is always yours. 2. Embrace change. Let go of resistance. Life is constantly shifting, like waves in the ocean. Never still, never predictable. No success is permanent, and no failure is final. Yet, as humans, we often cling to what feels safe and familiar. We resist change, fearing the unknown, and in doing so, we create suffering for ourselves. But what if we flipped our perspective? What if we saw change not as an enemy, but as a companion guiding us toward growth. The pain of resistance. Imagine holding onto a rope being pulled away from you. The tighter you grip, the more it burns your hands. The pain isn't caused by the rope itself, but by your refusal to let go. This is how resistance to change works in our lives. The more we fight it, the more we suffer. Think about a relationship that has run its course. You know deep down that it's over, yet you refuse to accept it. You replay memories, cling to what was, and resist the reality of what is. The more you resist, the more pain you feel. However, the moment you accept the truth, something shifts, you begin to heal. This lesson applies to every aspect of life. Careers, friendships, dreams that no longer serve us. When we resist the natural flow of life, we trap ourselves in cycles of frustration and disappointment. The power of acceptance. Stoicism teaches us that the only constant in life is change. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." The world is in a state of continuous motion, and so are we. Resisting this truth is like trying to stop the seasons from changing. It's impossible. Consider someone who loses a job unexpectedly. At first, they feel devastated, believing their career is over. But months later, they find an even better opportunity, one they never would have pursued had they not been forced to change direction. What seemed like a curse was actually a blessing in disguise. We see this pattern repeatedly in life. People who embrace change and open mind often find new paths they never imagined. They turn losses into lessons, endings into new beginnings, letting go and moving forward. So, how do we let go of resistance? Shift your perspective. Instead of seeing change as something happening to you, see it as something happening for you. Every shift in life carries a lesson, even if it's not immediately clear. Detached from outcomes, much of our suffering comes from attaching ourselves to specific expectations. We want things to stay the same, or we want them to unfold in a particular way. But life rarely follows our script. When we let go of rigid expectations, we free ourselves from unnecessary pain. Practice adaptability. The most successful people are not those who resist change, but those who adapt to it. Think of athletes who adjust their strategies mid-game, or businesses that reinvent themselves in tough times. Flexibility is a superpower. Embrace the unknown. Uncertainty can be scary, but it can also be exciting. Every great adventure begins with stepping into the unknown. Rather than fearing what lies ahead, embrace it with curiosity. Life is a series of chapters, and no chapter lasts forever. Some will bring joy, others will bring pain, but all will bring growth. The more we embrace change, the more we find peace within it. Instead of fearing endings, see them as new beginnings. Instead of resisting change, welcome it as a teacher. Because in the end, the only thing we can truly control is how we respond to the inevitable flow of life. 3. Your mindset determines your reality. Imagine waking up one morning to a flat tire on your way to work. You have two choices. You could either curse the bad luck, stress over being late, and let it ruin your entire day. Or you can take a deep breath, accept what happened, and use the time to listen to an audiobook, reflect, or even call someone you haven't spoken to in a while. The situation is the same, but your mindset determines how you experience it. Your mind is an incredibly powerful tool. It shapes how you interpret events, how you react to difficulties, and ultimately, how you live your life. When you shift your perspective, you change the way you experience the world. Instead of seeing problems as roadblocks, you can view them as opportunities for growth. Instead of labeling failure as defeat, you can see it as a stepping stone to success. Consider Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors of all time. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." His mindset was the reason he succeeded where others would have quit. Instead of being discouraged by repeated setbacks, he saw each one as a valuable lesson, refining his approach until he finally created the light bulb. Imagine if he had given up after the 100th or 1,000th attempt. His persistence and belief that failure was just part of the learning process allowed him to change the world. Another example comes from a man named Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist. In his book Man's Search for Meaning, He wrote about his experiences in a concentration camp where he endured unimaginable suffering. Yet, even in those horrific conditions, he discovered that the one thing no one could take away from him was his ability to choose his response. He realized that while he couldn't control what happened to him, he could control his thoughts, his perspective, and his attitude. This revelation gave him a sense of purpose and strength, helping him survive and later inspire millions. His story is a testament to the power of mindset. On a smaller scale, think about someone trying to start a business. Imagine two entrepreneurs launch the same type of company, but within the first year, both face financial setbacks. One sees this as proof that they aren't cut out for business and quits, while the other sees it as a learning experience. They analyze what went wrong, adjust their strategy, and keep going. A year later, the first person is still stuck in the same mindset, while the second has built a thriving company. The difference? Mindset. This applies to relationships, career growth, and even personal happiness. If you believe people are against you, you'll interpret their actions through that lens. If you believe you can grow from challenges, you'll find lessons in every difficulty. The way you think influences what you see and experience. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" shift your mindset to ask, "What is this teaching me?" Every difficult moment carries within it a seed of growth, if you choose to look for it. Train your mind to see setbacks as setups for something greater. Your reality is not just shaped by external events, but by the way you perceive them, and that perception is entirely in your hands. 4. Emotions are just data, not destiny. Ever felt overwhelmed by emotions? Maybe your heart pounded after receiving a short, cold message from someone you care about. Or perhaps you felt a wave of panic after a mistake at work, convinced it would lead to disaster. In moments like these, emotions feel powerful, undeniable, almost like prophecies about the future. But the Stoics remind us an important truth. Emotions are not absolute truths. They are simply signals from our minds. They are data points, not destiny. Imagine a ship captain facing a storm. The winds are howling, waves are crashing, and the sky is dark. A poor captain panics, making rash decisions that worsen the situation. A wise captain, however, reads the storm like data. They adjust the sails, stay calm, and guide the ship through with skill. This is how we must approach emotions. Instead of reacting impulsively, we must analyze them, understand their source, and then decide our course of action. Take the example of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. He faced betrayal, wars, and personal loss, yet he remained composed. His secret? He understood that emotions arise from our interpretations of events, not from the events themselves. If someone insults you, for instance, the insult itself has no power. It is your reaction to it that determines its impact. You can choose to let it ruin your day, or you can see it as a meaningless noise from another person's troubled mind. Let's consider a modern example. Picture Sarah, a young professional who is deeply anxious about an upcoming presentation. Her mind is flooded with thoughts. What if I mess up? What if they laugh at me? What if I forget my words? These emotions, fear, insecurity, feel overwhelming. But are they reality? No, they are simply signals, shaped by past experiences and assumptions. Instead of surrendering to them, Sarah can take a stoic approach, questioning her fears. Has anyone ever laughed at her in a meeting before? No. Does forgetting a few words mean failure? No. Can she prepare better to ease her nerves? Yes. By analyzing her emotions rather than obeying them, she regains control. The Stoics teach us that emotions should be acknowledged, but not blindly followed. Imagine someone you care about stops responding to your messages. Instantly, emotions surge, hurt, frustration, insecurity. Your mind spins. Are they ignoring me? Did I do something wrong? But before reacting, apply Stoic reasoning. What do you truly know? Are they busy? Are they struggling with something unrelated to you? Instead of assuming the worst, step back and assess the facts. By mastering this habit, you prevent unnecessary suffering. This perspective is powerful in relationships, careers, and personal challenges. A rejected job application doesn't mean failure. It's data that can guide you to a better opportunity. A breakup isn't a life-ending tragedy. It's information that the relationship wasn't meant to last. Emotions will always arise, but they do not define reality. Only our choices do. The more you master your emotions, the more you master your life. Acknowledge them, question them, and decide your response with wisdom, not impulse. This is the Stoic Way. 5. Fear is an illusion you can overcome. Fear is often nothing more than a story we tell ourselves. It is the mind's way of protecting us from perceived threats, whether real or imagined. But what if we reframe fear as something else, something less paralyzing and more empowering? What if, instead of viewing fear as a stop sign, we see it as an open door? The Stoics taught that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Fear is not an immovable wall. It is a mist that dissipates when we move forward. Think about the first time you had to speak in front of an audience. Your hands might have trembled, your heartbeat might have raced, and your thoughts might have spiraled into worst-case scenarios. You feared judgment, embarrassment, or failure. But once you spoke those first words, the fear started to subside. Why? Because the reality of the situation was far less intimidating than the story your mind had created. The same applies to other fears, whether it's approaching someone you admire, starting a new business, or making a major life change. The fear itself is often worse than the actual experience. Consider the Stoic philosopher Seneca, who once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of what we fear never actually happens, and when it does, we are often more capable of handling it than we initially believed. When fear arises, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Can I handle it? More often than not, the answer is yes. Imagine you're afraid of switching careers. You worry about failing, struggling financially, or looking foolish in the eyes of others. But break it down logically. If you fail, could you try again? Could you learn from your mistakes? Could you return to a different job if needed? The answer is almost always yes. Your mind constructs elaborate horror stories, but reality is usually far more manageable. Reframing fear as excitement for growth can be a game changer. Picture an athlete preparing for a big competition. Their heart races, adrenaline pumps, and their body is on high alert. A nervous speaker experiences the same physical sensations. But the difference lies in perception. One sees it as excitement, the other as fear. The body reacts in the same way. It's the mind that assigns meaning. By shifting your mindset, you can turn fear into fuel for action rather than an excuse for inaction. Consider the example of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. He faced constant threats, from wars to political betrayals. Yet he remained steadfast, reminding himself that fear was simply a product of the mind. He wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Another powerful example comes from the world of business. Many of the most successful entrepreneurs, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, have faced enormous risks. They, too, felt fear of failure, fear of criticism, fear of losing everything. But they acted anyway, understanding that progress requires stepping into uncertainty. Ultimately, fear is an illusion you can overcome. It is a shadow that grows larger the longer you avoid it. But the moment you face it, the shadow shrinks. The next time you feel fear creeping in, challenge it. Ask yourself, is this fear real or is it a story I'm telling myself? More often than not, you'll find that it's nothing more than a passing thought, unworthy of control over your life. Take action despite fear. Step into the unknown. And when you do, you'll realize that fear was never as powerful as you believed it to be. 6. Happiness is an inside job. Most people spend their lives chasing happiness in external things, money, validation, relationships, or status. They believe that a higher salary, more social media followers, or the admiration of others will finally bring them peace. But time and time again, we see people who have everything on the outside, wealth, fame, and power, yet remain deeply unhappy. The truth is, external things can only provide fleeting pleasure, not lasting fulfillment. True happiness comes from within, and the less you depend on external validation, the more unshakable your inner peace becomes. A Stoic understands this deeply. Instead of looking outward for happiness, they cultivate it from within, focusing on wisdom, gratitude, and self-sufficiency. The illusion of external happiness. Consider the story of a man named Daniel. He worked tirelessly to build his career, believing that a six-figure salary, a luxurious house, and an expensive car would bring him happiness. He finally reached his goal, but instead of feeling fulfilled, he found himself constantly worrying about maintaining his status, about what others thought of him, and about losing what he had worked so hard for. He was trapped in a cycle of anxiety because his happiness depended on things outside his control. One day, Daniel met an old friend, Lucas, who lived a simple life. Lucas didn't have a prestigious job or an extravagant home, but he was genuinely happy. When Daniel asked him how he could be so content with so little, Lucas smiled and said, "I don't measure my happiness by things that can be taken away from me. My peace comes from knowing who I am, being grateful for what I have, and not needing more to feel complete." That conversation changed Daniel's perspective. He realized that no matter how much he achieved, he would never be satisfied if his happiness depended on external factors. He started shifting his focus inward, practicing gratitude, and finding joy in the present moment rather than constantly chasing more. The Stoic approach to happiness. The Stoics teach that happiness is not something to be pursued. It is something to be cultivated. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, once said, "There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will." This means recognizing what is within our control and letting go of what is not. You cannot control how others perceive you, how much fortune you will have, or whether life will always be fair. But you can control how you respond to life, how you think, and how you choose to find meaning in every situation. Instead of seeking happiness in external achievements, a Stoic finds in virtue, wisdom, and self-discipline. They practice gratitude by appreciating what they already have instead of longing for what they don't. They embrace discomfort and adversity as opportunities for growth rather than seeing them as obstacles to happiness. Practical steps to cultivate inner happiness. Practice gratitude. Instead of focusing on what's missing, focus on what you already have. Each day, take a moment to reflect on 3 things you're grateful for. Detach from external validation. Stop measuring your worth by how others perceive you. Recognize that opinions are outside your control, and your value is not determined by external approval. Embrace the present moment. Happiness is not found in the past or future. It exists in the now. Mindfulness, meditation, or simply taking a deep breath and being present can help you appreciate life as it is. Develop self-sufficiency. Learn to enjoy your own company and find fulfillment in personal growth rather than external rewards. Reframe challenges. Instead of seeing difficulties as sources of suffering, view them as opportunities to develop resilience and wisdom. When you realize that happiness is an inside job, you free yourself from the endless chase of external validation. You become unshakable, no longer at the mercy of circumstances, and able to experience true peace and contentment. In the end, happiness is not about what you have. It's about who you become. 7. Challenges reveal your true strength. Difficulties are not punishments. They are training grounds for resilience. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to sharpen your character, to refine your perspective, and to cultivate inner strength. Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "How can I grow from this?" This simple shift in mindset from victim to warrior changes everything. Life is unpredictable. It throws obstacles in our path, often when we least expect them. But these struggles are not meant to break us. They are meant to shape us. Consider the story of a young woman named Maya. She had always been a hard worker, but when she was suddenly laid off from her job, she felt like her world had collapsed. The initial shock turned into self-doubt, and she found herself questioning her worth. But instead of letting the setback define her, she decided to take control. She used her time to learn new skills, network with people in her industry, and even start a small business on the side. A year later, she had built something more fulfilling than the job she had lost. Her challenge, which once seemed insurmountable, became the very thing that propelled her forward. This is the essence of resilience. When life pushes you down, you have 2 choices: stay down or get back up stronger than before. Every challenge offers a hidden lesson. Some lessons are about patience, others about perseverance, and some about letting go of things beyond our control. Take the example of an athlete training for a marathon. The first few weeks are grueling. Muscles ache, stamina is low, and self-doubt creeps in. But with each passing day, as they push through the discomfort, their body adapts. What once seemed impossible becomes second nature. The pain they endured was not a punishment. It was preparation. The same applies to life's difficulties. Without resistance, there is no growth. Another powerful example comes from history. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, enduring unimaginable hardship. Yet, he did not allow bitterness to consume him. Instead, he used his time to reflect, to grow, and to prepare himself for the leadership role that would one day change an entire nation. His challenge refined his character, strengthening his resolve and deepening his wisdom. If he had let anger and despair take over, history would have been written very differently. When we face difficulties, it's easy to slip into self-pity, believing that life is unfair. But the truth is, every strong person you admire has endured struggles that made them who they are. The most inspiring stories come from those who refuse to be defeated by their circumstances. Stoicism teaches us to view obstacles not as misfortunes, but as opportunities for growth. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote in his Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes a way." This means that the very difficulties we fear can become the catalyst for our greatest achievements. So, the next time life challenges you, remember, it is not there to break you. It is there to build you. Embrace the struggle, learn from it, and emerge stronger than before. True strength is not found in comfort, but in overcoming the trials that test our limits. 8. Loss and suffering are invitations to growth. Loss is an inevitable part of life. It comes in many forms: losing a loved one, a job, a relationship, or even a cherished dream. At times, it feels as if the very ground beneath us has been pulled away, leaving us stranded in a void of uncertainty and sorrow. Yet, amidst the pain, loss carries within an invitation, an opportunity to grow, transform, and rediscover our inner strength. While we cannot always control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. Loss is a part of life. Throughout history, every culture and spiritual tradition has acknowledged the transient nature of life. The Buddhist philosophy teaches the concept of impermanence, that everything in life is temporary, and clinging to what must eventually fade only leads to suffering. The Stoics, too, embraced a similar view, believing that true peace comes from accepting the natural cycles of gain and loss. Consider a tree in autumn. Its leaves change color and eventually fall, yet the tree does not resist. It does not grieve the loss of its leaves because it understands this is part of the cycle. Come spring, new leaves will emerge, fresh and vibrant. We, too, are part of this ever-changing cycle. Loss is not the end. It is a transition, a passage to something new. Suffering is a choice. While loss is inevitable, suffering is optional. We suffer not because of the loss itself, but because of our resistance to it. When we hold on too tightly to what must eventually go, we create our own pain. It is our attachment, our unwillingness to let go, that prolongs suffering. Take, for example, a man who loses his job. Two people in the same situation may react very differently. One falls into despair, believing his life is ruined, while another sees it as an opportunity to explore new paths. The difference is not in the event itself, but in the perception of it. The second person acknowledges a loss, but chooses to move forward rather than remain in suffering. What remains after loss? When we lose something, it may feel like we are losing a part of ourselves, but in reality, we remain. Our resilience remains. Our ability to adapt, to learn, to rebuild. These are the things that can never be taken from us. No loss, no matter how great, can take away the essence of who we are. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning, lost everything: his family, his freedom, and nearly his life. Yet, even in the depths of unimaginable suffering, he discovered that one thing remained: his ability to choose his response. He found meaning in his suffering, and through that meaning he endured. His story is a testament to the fact that while we may lose external things, We never lose our capacity for growth and transformation, moving forward stronger. Growth is not always comfortable, and healing is not always immediate. But every loss carries within a lesson. When a relationship ends, it teaches us about love, self-worth, and what we truly need. When a dream fades, it opens a door to new possibilities we may have never considered. Even in death, the loss of a loved one reminds us of the preciousness of life and the importance of living fully. The greatest transformation often comes from the deepest pain. A caterpillar must completely dissolve inside its cocoon before it emerges as a butterfly. Likewise, we, too, undergo internal metamorphosis in times of loss. If we embrace change rather than resist it, we emerge wiser, stronger, and more resilient than before. Loss is a teacher. It strips away our illusions of control and reminds us of what truly matters. Though it may bring sorrow, it also offers an invitation to grow, to learn, and step into a new version of ourselves. When we accept that nothing truly belongs to us, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. We do not have to remain stuck in pain. We have the power to find meaning, to adapt, and to move forward. In the end, what remains is not what we have lost, but what we have gained through the journey of transformation. 9. Good and bad are just labels. Free yourself. From the moment we are born, we are taught to categorize the world around us. We learn that fire is hot, ice is cold, kindness is good, and cruelty is bad. Society gives us definitions of success and failure, right and wrong, worthy and unworthy. These labels shape our perceptions, dictating how we react to the events in our lives. But what if these labels are just illusions? What if, instead of seeing experiences as good or bad, we saw them as simply part of life's unfolding journey? Imagine a man who loses his job. Society tells him this is a failure. His family and friends pity him, reinforcing belief that he has lost something valuable. He feels ashamed, uncertain about the future. But what if this so-called failure is actually an opportunity? What if losing this job allows him to discover his true passion, leading him to start his own business or explore a career that brings him real fulfillment? In this light, his job loss isn't bad. It's simply change. Consider a woman who is unexpectedly diagnosed with serious illness. At first, she is overwhelmed by fear and sadness. Society tells her that illness is a misfortune, a negative event. But as she moves through her treatment, she begins to see life differently. She prioritizes what truly matters, deepens her relationships, and finds a sense of peace she never had before. Her illness, though challenging, becomes a teacher. Was it truly bad, or was it just another experience that shaped her journey? The way we interpret events determines how they affect us. The ancient Chinese parable of the farmer and the horse illustrates this beautifully. One day, a farmer's horse runs away. His neighbors say, "What bad luck." The farmer simply replies, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returns with a group of wild horses. "What good fortune," the neighbors exclaim. Again, the farmer says, "Maybe." Later, the farmer's son tries to tame one of the wild horses and breaks his leg in the process. "What tragedy," the neighbors lament. The farmer, unfazed, says, "Maybe." Soon after, the army comes to recruit young men for war, but they pass over the farmer's injured son. "How lucky you are," say the neighbors. And the farmer again replies, "Maybe." The lesson here is clear. Nothing is inherently good or bad. It is our perception and reaction that assign meaning to events. When we free ourselves from rigid labels, we open ourselves to the flow of life. We begin to see that every experience, whether joyful or painful, has the potential to shape us in meaningful ways. This shift in perspective can transform our lives. Instead of seeing obstacles, we see opportunities. Instead of dwelling on failures, we find lessons. Instead of fearing change, we embrace growth. This does not mean we ignore pain or pretend that suffering doesn't exist. It means we learn to accept life as it comes, without judgment. Freeing yourself from labels requires practice. The next time you face a challenge, pause before labeling it as bad. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How might this experience serve me in the long run? Over time, you'll find that life feels lighter, freer, and filled with endless possibilities. Good and bad are just labels. When you remove them, you don't lose control, you gain freedom. Life is not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond. The power is in your hands. If this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that empowers you to master your mind and your life. Stay strong, stay present, and remember, nothing is good or bad. It's all about perspective.